All right, we are into the 28th Sutra, and we are at the 8 means to yoga. So let's get started. When the means to yoga have been steadily practiced, and when impurity has been overcome, enlightenment takes place, leading up to full illumination. We now come to the practical part of the book, wherein instruction is given as to the methods. Oh, it's so funny. As soon as we start reading, you got to yawn. Sorry about that. We now come to the practical part of the book, wherein instruction is given as to the method to pursue if full yoga, union, or at-one-ment is to be achieved. The work might be described as twofold. One, the practice of the right means, whereby union is brought about, and two, the discipline of the lower threefold man, so that impurity in any of the three bodies is eradicated. This steadfast application to the twofold work produces two corresponding results, each dependent on its cause. One is discrimination becomes possible. The practice of the means leads the aspirant to a scientific understanding of the distinction existing between the self and the not-self, between spirit and matter. This knowledge is no longer theoretical in that to which the man aspires, but is a fact in the experience of the disciple, and one upon which he bases all his subsequent activities. And then two, discernment takes place. As the purificatory process is carried on, the sheaths or bodies which veil the reality come attenuated and no longer act as thick veils, hiding the soul in the world wherein the soul normally moves. The aspirant becomes aware of a part of himself hitherto hidden and unknown. He approaches the heart of the mystery of himself and draws closer to the angel of the presence, which can only be truly seen at initiation. He discerns a new factor in a new world and seeks to make them his own in conscious experience upon the physical plane. It should be noted here that the two causes of revelation, the practice of the 8 means to yoga and the purification of the life in the 3 worlds, deal with the man from the standpoint of the 3 worlds and bring about in a man's physical brain the power to discriminate between the real and the unreal, and to discern the things of the spirit. They cause also certain changes of conditions within the head, reorganize the vital airs, and act directly upon the pineal gland and the pituitary body. When these 4 practice, purification, discrimination, and discernment are part of the life of the physical plane man, then the spiritual man, the ego or thinker on his own plane, attends to his part of the liberating process, and the final 2 stages are brought about from above downwards. This 6-fold process is the correspondence upon the path of discipleship of the individualizing process, wherein animal man, the lower quaternary, physical, etheric, astral, and lower mental, received that twofold expression of spirit, Atma Buddhi, spiritual will and spiritual love, which completed him and made him truly man. The 2 stages of development which are brought about by the ego within the purified and earnest aspirant are: 1, enlightenment. The light in the head, which is at first but a spark, is fanned to a flame which illumines all things and is fed constantly from above. This is progressive, see previous sutra, and is dependent upon steadfast practice, meditation, and earnest service. 1 second. Illumination is the gradually increasing downpour of fiery energy increases steadily the light in the head or the effulgence found in the brain in the neighborhood of the pineal gland. This is to the little system of the threefold man in physical manifestation what the physical sun is to the solar system. This light becomes eventually a blaze of glory, and the man becomes a son of light or a son of righteousness. Such were the Buddha, the Christ, and all the great ones who have attained. That's very telling. It's very direct. I mean, we can see what's going on here. I've been told that everyone understands and or feels these things differently, and some may not feel it in our psyche at all, or in our physiologically at all, potentially, but others absolutely have this with them all the time, where it's felt. And then you would be able to sense this and feel this progressive flame, which is illuminating and is constantly fed to the centers. And then you would also, some can also feel the downpour of energy, so as to know what is happening, and the progression that it's making. So it's a very individual thing, as far as I understand. That's something I'd like to hear what other people have to say. I find it interesting, because I have my own take. We all have our own experience with it. And I don't want to talk too much about my own individual experience, because it may not benefit anyone, and it may not be, your experience. And then that can, people, when we wonder why, but apparently it's just a sensitivity type of thing. So let's move on to the 29th sutra. The 8 means of yoga are the commandments or yama, the rules or nijama, posture or asana, right control of life force or pranayama, abstraction or pratyahara, attention or dharana, meditation or dhyana, and contemplation or samadhi. It will be noted that these means or practices are apparently simple, but it must be carefully remembered that they do not refer to anything accomplished on one or other plane in some one body, but to the simultaneous activity and practice of these methods in all 3 bodies at once, so that the entire threefold lower man practices the means as they refer to the physical, astral, and mental vehicles. This is often forgotten. Therefore, in the study of these various means to yoga or union, we must consider them as they apply to the physical man, then to the emotional man, then to the mental man. The yogi, for instance, has to understand the significance of right breathing or of posture as they relate to the triple aligned and coordinated lower man, remembering that it is only as the lower man forms a coherent rhythmic instrument that it becomes possible for the ego to enlighten and illuminate him. The practice of breathing exercises, for instance, has led the aspirant frequently to concentrate upon the physical apparatus of breath to the exclusion of the analogous practice of rhythmic control of the emotional life. It may be of use here if, before we take up the consideration of the means, one by one, we tabulated them carefully, giving their synonyms where possible. So means one is we have the commandments, and I'm assuming these would also be called the limbs. I don't know, but there's 8 limbs, and then I'm not super familiar with Buddhism, but I would figure that this might have a connection to the eightfold, the Noble Eightfold Path. So self-control or forbearance, restraint, abstention from wrong acts. These are 5 in number and relate to the relation of the disciple or chela to others and to the outside world. Means 2 are the rules, nijama, right observances. These are likewise 5 in number and are frequently called the religious observances because they relate to the interior life of the disciple and to that tie, the sutratma or link, which relates him to God or to his Father in heaven. These 2, the 5 commandments and the 5 rules, are the Hindu correspondence to the 10 commandments of the Bible and cover the daily life of the aspirant and as it affects those around him and his own internal reactions. The third means is posture, asana, right poise, correct attitude, position. This third means concerns the physical attitude of the disciple when in meditation, his emotional attitude towards his environment or his group, and his mental attitude towards ideas, thought currents, and abstract concepts. Finally, the practice of this means coordinates and perfects the lower threefold man so that the 3 sheets can form a perfect channel for the expression or manifestation of the life of spirit. Means 4 is the right control of the life force or pranayama, suppression of the breath, regulation of the breath. This refers to the control, regulation, and suppression of the vital airs, the breath and the forces or shaktis of the body. It leads in reality to the organization of the vital body or the etheric body so that the life current or forces emanating from the ego or spiritual man on his own plane can be correctly transmitted to the physical man in objective manifestation. And then we have the 5th means of abstraction or pratyahara, right withdrawal or restraint, withdrawal of the senses. Here we get back to the physical and the etheric bodies, to the emotional body, the seat of the desires, of sensory perception, and of feeling. Here can be noted the orderly method which is followed in the pursuit of yoga or union. The physical plane life, external and internal, is attended to. The correct attitude to life and its triple manifestation is cultivated. The etheric body is organized and controlled, and the astral body is reoriented. For the desired nature is subdued, and the real man withdraws himself gradually from all sense contacts. The next 2 means relate to the mental body, and the final one to the real man or thinker. And then we have the 6th, attention, dharana, concentration, fixation of the mind. Here, the instrument of the thinker, the real man, is brought under this control. The 6 senses coordinated, understood, focused, and used. So he's talking about the mental plane here, the mind. And then we have meditation, 7, meditation dhyana, the capacity of the thinker to use the mind as desired and to transmit to the brain higher thoughts, abstract ideas, and idealistic concepts. This means concerns higher and lower mind. And here we have higher and lower mind right here on this mental plane. These 7 constitute the 3 up top, and the 3, and then the 4 on the bottom constitute the higher and lower mind. And then we have the 8th and last, contemplation or samadhi. This relates to the ego or real man and concerns the realm of the soul. The spiritual man contemplates, studies, or meditates upon the world of causes, upon the things of God. He then, utilizing his controlled instrument, the mind, controlled through the practice of concentration and meditation, transmits to the physical brain via the sutratma or thread, which passes down through the 3 sheets to the brain, that which the soul knows, sees, and understands. This produces full illumination. And that is said to be done when the Antakarana is nearly complete, or the rainbow bridge has been built. Looks like now we are going to get into the means. All right, let's definitely do the first means here. The 30th Sutra. Harmlessness, truth to all beings, abstention from theft, from incontinence, and from avarice constitute yama, or the 5 commandments. These 5 commandments are simple and clear, and yet if practiced would make a man perfect in his relationships to other men, to supermen, and to the subhuman realms. The first command, to be harmless, is in reality a summation of the others. These commandments are curiously complete and cover the triple nature. In studying all these means, we shall note their relation to one or other part of the lower threefold manifestation of the ego. And the physical, one, physical nature of harmlessness. This covers a man's physical acts, and they relate to all forms of divine manifestation and concern specifically his force nature, or the energy which he expresses through his physical plane activities. He hurts no one and injures nobody. And we have truth. This concerns primarily his use of speech and the organs of sound, and relates to the truth in the inmost part, so that truth in externality becomes possible. This is a large subject and deals with the formulation of a man's belief regarding God, people, things, and forms through the medium of the tongue and voice. This is covered in the aphorism in the light on the path. Before the voice can speak in the presence of the master, it must have lost its power to wound. Three is abstention from theft. The disciple is precise and accurate in all his affairs, and appropriates nothing which is not rightly his. This is a large concept covering more than the fact of actual physical appropriation of others' possessions. So that's what we're dealing with in the physical nature. Now we're moving on to the astral, abstention from incontinence. This is literally desirelessness and governs the outgoing tendencies to that which is the not self, which finds physical plane expression in the relation between the sexes. It must be remembered here, however, that this expression is regarded by the occult student as only one form which the outgoing impulse takes, and a form which allies a man closely with the animal kingdom. Any impulse which concerns the forms and the real man, and which tends to link him to a form, and to the physical plane is regarded as a form of incontinence. There is physical plane incontinence, and this should have been left behind by the disciple long ago. But there are also many tendencies towards pleasure seeking with consequent satisfaction of the desire nature, and this, to the true aspirant, is likewise regarded as incontinence. And that is worthy of much contemplation. And if we're thinking, and we've said this, a number of times at this point, but if we're thinking in terms of magnetism, what are you being drawn towards? And that's, if you're, if we look and are aware of our life, and we see what we're being drawn towards and what we're doing, then these, what's holding us down can be seen, and we can work toward, on that. It's not really what we think in terms of, oh, this is okay, or that's not okay, or these things are proper, or I'm not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed. That's not how this actually is, in my experience. Because I've watched some of the, I've watched these things fall off. And I say fall off, the magnetic attraction to them falls off. And then it's not a matter of, oh, well, this is good or bad or any of that. It's just, there's nothing drawing you to it. There's nothing. It's not there. There's no attraction to a thing, like your predilections of this or that or some other thing. Once it falls away, it's not there, so you don't even realize it necessarily. But then also, when you do go back to look, you would see that there's no pull. So it's interesting. Then we have as we get into the mental nature here. Now we're moving up from physical down below to astral. Now we're moving up to the mental. Abstention from avarice. This deals with the sin of covetousness, which is literally theft upon the mental plane. The sin of avarice may lead to any number of physical plane sins and is very powerful. It concerns mental force and is a generic term covering those potent longings which have their seat not only in the emotional or comic body, desire body, which is on the astral plane, but in the mental body also, or in the comic body. This commandment to abstain from avarice is covered by St. Paul when he says, I have learned in whatsoever state I am, wherewith to be content. That state has to be attained before the mind can be so quieted that the things of the soul can find entrance. Potent longings which have their seat not only in the emotional or desire body, but in the mental body also. This is the old Zen, proverb, saying, let go or get dragged. We have to be aware of what we desire and then go into that and observe it and discern it and really dig around in it and see if there's anything really there, and then let it go. So very interesting stuff, very common sense stuff. If we were to talk about anything on here, this abstention from incontinence is I want to say, somebody who's very intellectual can probably pick up on that very quickly. But I'm not super intellectual. I have not that's not there for me. And so as I look at this, it's this outgoing energy, right? It's this outgoing energy. It's how driven are we by this astral plane? Is it driving us, or are we driving it? And can we control it? Is it being controlled? Is it subdued? Or is it still running our life, essentially? This is an interesting thing, because this animal instincts, these animal urges are, there's a lot written about sex. Let's put it that way. The problems of sex, sexual energy. What is it? How does it, ultimately it's divine, obviously. But, DK is always saying, the sexual energy has to be transmuted, and we have to raise these things above, out of the lower centers. So if we were to look at these as centers, this would be our sacral chakra, where all of this is at. This is where the sex urge is, and these, animal urges come up. So we have to bring them up higher. We have to transmute that energy into spiritual aspiration, essentially. All right, let's keep going. This is good stuff. Let's do okay, so 31 is still the commandment, regarding the commandments. Yama, or the 5 commandments, constitutes the universal duty and is irrespective of race, place, time, or emergency. Okay, got it? Pretty clear. The sutra makes clear, it sure does make clear, the universality of certain requirements. And by study of these 5 commandments, which form the basis of what the Buddhist calls right conduct, it will be seen that they form the basis of all true law, and that their infringement constitutes lawlessness. The word translated duty or obligation could well be expressed by that comprehensive term dharma in respect to others. Dharma means literally the proper working out of one's obligations or karma in the place, surroundings, and environment where fate has put one. Certain governing factors in conduct must be observed, and no latitude is permitted in these respects, no matter what one's nationality, no matter what the locality in which one finds oneself, and no matter what age one may be or what emergency may rise. These are the 5 immutable laws governing human conduct, and when they are followed by all the sons of men, the full significance of the term peace to all beings will be comprehended. Okay, we got it. Those were the commandments. There's everybody, or did we get that? So harmlessness, truth to all beings, abstention from theft, abstention from incontinence, and from avarice. No, let's see. I just want to look up the term avarice real quick. Just want to look up avarice to see if we can make it even more simple. Yeah. So it's just, greed for wealth or material gain. So we are, as St. Paul said, whatsoever state we are in, wherewith to be continent. So ultimately, there's a lot of faith initially, and then to learn that faith that you're going to be taken care of, and that you don't have to do anything. And now you can move on. We can move on to the place of the observer, the point of view of the observer. Because we should know now, after having gone through all of this, as I'm seeing this, as we're coming through these sutras, we're learning that this is an outer expression, and the causes are, we're seeing the effect. We're not seeing the causes. All right. So what can you do? What can we do here to manipulate these things, really? I mean, really, and what would you want to manipulate here after having known and found out all the things that we just studied? I mean, that it doesn't make sense, right? So ultimately, we learn to trust. We learn to get comfortable in this. We learn to we know that we're going to be taken care of, and whatever we need is here. It's by law, we're covered. So we don't, it's not something we need to, it's not where we should be sending our energy or our thoughts on to our own needs. It's not, it doesn't make sense, especially after all that we just went through here. So let's see, let's see how long this one is. Okay, let's do this. Let's do the means. Well, maybe we're not going to do the means. No, we're going to stick to what we did today with the commandments. Means one is the commandments. Say up here about it: self-control or forbearance, restraint, abstention from wrong acts. These are 5 in number. We talked about them. And relate to the relation of the disciple or chela to others and to the outside world. Life becomes much more peaceful when when we're living these out. Certainly, very easy to see, and it's very simple to see that when we don't do it, the waves that we create, the unnecessary. Unnecessary, emotional trauma, I guess, or something you can see that we create. Our environment is not as peaceful as it should be. And that's easy to see. Right? It's not as positive as it should be either. And it's projected onto us and out of us too. So our environment should be peaceful for the most part. All right, we're going to leave it there. We will pick it back up tomorrow, and we will get into the means, the rules rather. Yeah, means two and the rules. All right. Have a good one.